it, but I wasn't today. Plus, I brought you some goodies, some things to check out, some things to sample tasting, as I'm here to give you a little presentation about the holiday of Passover we find ourselves in the middle of right now, and to answer any questions you may have about it. So I brought some ritual items, I brought some things that are associated with the holiday, and I have some things to pass around, like I said, some things to taste as well. It wouldn't be Passover without, of course, the matzah, which we'll talk about in a moment. So first things first, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the majority of folks here are not Jewish. That's okay. All right, so I'm going to start it with some of the basics. Passover is a major festival in Judaism. It's one of the big three that are commanded in the Torah. In the book of Exodus, it tells the story of that Exodus from Egypt. And of course, this is a famous story. If you watch the Ten Commandments around the springtime every year, it's the Sleepy DeMille movie. Let my people go. No, I won't let them go. Splitting of the sea, everybody crosses. Huzzah, we're saved out of slavery. The Seder plate, which is the centerpiece of the Seder meal, and I call it a meal, it's a lot more than a meal. It's a whole ritual that brings families together. In fact, a poll was done a few years ago by the Pew Research Foundation of American Jews, and they asked them all sorts of questions about their involvement in Jewish life. How many go to synagogue regularly? How many are members of an organization? How many do this holiday or that holiday? The number one thing American Jews did was the Seder meal, more even than Hanukkah. You would think that would be a popular holiday, and it is. Something about the Seder meal really resonates, and the answers given were things like, we like celebrating freedom, we like taking a moment and being thankful for our blessings. It's a little bit like Jewish Thanksgiving. The family comes in from out of town, everybody gathers around the table, talks about what they're thankful for over a big fancy meal. The only thing missing is football. We don't have that, and it's not fall. So we get Thanksgiving twice a year. We get the religious Thanksgiving and the secular Thanksgiving in November. The Seder, by the way, Seder is a Hebrew word. I told you we don't name things well. Seder means order, like the order that we do the steps. That's it. So Passover Seder is one of several Seders that exist in Judaism, but if you use the word, that's what everybody assumes you're talking about. There is a Seder for Shabbat and a Seder for other holidays, but really when you say that word, people associate it with Passover. And these little books, whether it's from Maxwell House or Publix or what have you, tell us exactly how to do it. So theoretically, every Jewish person on the planet is doing the same kind of things in the same order on the same night, which is kind of nice to feel connected. The symbols are really what make this holiday what it is. We have room for 6 things on the Seder plate, some of which we're going to eat, some of which we're just going to look at. For example, the shank bone, the roasted shank bone. Yeah, we bought shank bones. There's a kosher Winn-Dixie over in Orlando that had the meat products that we needed. We bought a shank bone there, threw it in the oven, roasted it, put it on the plate, and that's it. We don't eat it. Why don't we eat it? Because it's a throwback to when the temple stood, and every family brought their own lamb. That was your dinner. You brought the Passover sacrifice on the night of Passover. They slaughtered the animal, roasted it, gave you the meat, and that was dinner. But we don't have a holy temple anymore, and we don't do sacrifices of animals so much anymore. That would probably get us in trouble with certain organizations. So we just have a remnant, a throwback to remember that that's how people used to draw close to God, was through sacrifice. So we have a spot for the bone, but we don't do anything with it. We certainly don't sacrifice any animals that weren't already going to become dinner. We have a roasted egg on there as well. There was usually the Paschal sacrifice itself and some side orders that went with it. If you had something to be thankful for, or if you had any sins to get rid of last minute, you might be bringing more than one sacrifice, so the roasted egg is kind of a symbol of that. Some say it's a symbol of spring. Somebody looking for a connection between Passover and Easter might see one there, although Passover, of course, goes way, way back before there was that. But as in terms of fertility and spring and rebirth, an egg's a good symbol. We have then the bitter herbs. Ooh, that's really the famous part. We want to remember or get a little flavor of how life was bitter for our ancestors. Traditionally, we use horseradish for that. The hotter, the better. So everyone has clear sinuses on Passover, absolutely. Although I've seen romaine lettuce used, scallions, anything that you eat. Boy, that was spicy, or that was hot, or that was tough to take. Well, we temper that by dipping it in something called charoset, which is a mixture, And this is where traditions diverge here. In the Ashkenazi world that I grew up in, charoset is diced apples, chopped walnuts, wine, and a little bit of cinnamon. And it's so good. You always make a little bit for the plate, and then my wife would make another big bowl because we'd be chowing down on it the rest of the night. So we dip the bitter into the sweet. It does make a flavor in Israel called haroset, which remember I told you it's apples, walnuts, wine, and cinnamon. They said, why that makes a good ice cream, and you can buy it in Israel, Ben & Jerry's for Passover, haroset flavored ice cream. I don't know how I feel about that. Beats gefilte fish flavor. That's a simple food. This is super simple food. Yes.
Does Strites still make matzah?
They do.
They do?
Knows that I ask for a snack every once in a
You
while.
can break off bigger
About
pieces.
10
I
o'clock.
can't eat it.
And she goes and gives me a matzah. And I chew on that. Yeah.
I tell you,
She gives me one of these.
I grew up in the New York area, so we used to have school break. Usually every year covered Passover.
It's like a
Passover and
game.
Easter were
When
close
the
enough.
music
They
stops.
just gave us
Are
spring
we supposed
break
to
and
eat
everybody
this?
got it.
Yes, when the
But
music
a year
stops,
like
you take
this
a bite.
one, where Easter was a month ago, and that has to do with the vagaries of the Jewish calendar, and our leap year adds a whole month, it's a whole story. So there was a year, I think in 5th or 6th grade, where I was in middle school for Passover, and I brought matzah for lunch, and the non-Jewish kids wouldn't leave me alone. They wanted this stuff. And by day 6 or so of the holiday, I was more than happy to give all of that away. Because it starts out, oh, this is kind of neat, but after you're dealing with this for a week,
I have
yeah, we're
had
kind
it.
of done. Yeah, this is the shmura. We can pass that around if you want.
I haven't seen anyone who wants it yet. You want to try it? Yeah, try that.
It's a sunny spring day in New York, and businessman decides to take his lunch during Passover in the park near his office. He goes to the park on a beautiful spring day, sits down, takes out his lunch, which of course consists of matzah and a few other things, and he notices sitting on the other end of the park bench is a blind man. So wanting to be neighborly, he decides to share his lunch, and he hands the man a sheet of matzah. The man takes it and rubs it for a while and finally turns to the man and said, "Who wrote this junk?" Thank you. That's my best Passover joke. That's all I got.